Picture a small island off the coast of what is now North Carolina. The year is 1587. More than 100 men, women, and children step off their ships onto the sand, carrying everything they own, ready to build a new life in a strange, wild land. 3 years later, when help finally arrives, every single one of them is gone. No bodies, no signs of a struggle, just an empty fort, and one strange word carved into a wooden post. This is the true story of the Roanoke colony, one of the oldest and most haunting unsolved mysteries in American history. Grab a seat, because we're about to sail back more than 400 years to find out what really happened to the people history calls the Lost Colony. In the late 1500s, England was hungry for a piece of the New World. Spain had already grown rich from its colonies in Central and South America, and Queen Elizabeth I wanted England to have its own foothold across the Atlantic. In 1584, she granted a charter to Sir Walter Raleigh, a dashing courtier and adventurer, giving him the right to explore and colonize North America. Raleigh never actually set foot on Roanoke himself. Instead, he sent explorers ahead to scout the land. They returned with glowing reports of the region they named Virginia, in honor of Elizabeth, the so-called Virgin Queen. The land, they said, was fertile, the natives were mostly friendly, and the coastline was perfect for a base of operations, one that could also serve as a launching point for privateers to raid Spanish treasure ships. It sounded like paradise. It would turn out to be anything but easy. In 1585, Raleigh sent a group of over 100 men, soldiers and gentlemen, not families, to establish a military-style outpost on Roanoke Island. This first colony struggled almost immediately. The settlers depended heavily on the local Algonquian-speaking tribes, especially the Secatan and Croatoan peoples, for food. Relations soured quickly, made worse by English mistrust and at least one violent clash that left a native leader named Wingina dead. By the spring of 1586, supplies were dangerously low, and no relief ships had arrived from England. When the famous explorer Sir Francis Drake happened to stop by the island after raiding Spanish colonies in the Caribbean, the desperate settlers begged for a ride home. Drake agreed, and the first Roanoke colony was abandoned almost as soon as it began. Ironically, a fresh supply ship arrived just weeks later and found the fort empty. It left a small detachment of men behind to hold England's claim to the land. Men who would later vanish without a trace themselves, setting an eerie precedent for what was to come. Raleigh wasn't ready to give up. In 1587, he tried again, but this time with a different strategy. Instead of soldiers, he sent actual families, 115 men, women, and children, led by an artist and mapmaker named John White. White had sailed on the first expedition and had even painted detailed watercolors of the native peoples and landscape, some of which survive today as priceless historical records. The plan was to settle further north in the Chesapeake Bay area, but the ship's pilot, a Portuguese navigator named Simon Fernandez, refused to take them any farther and dropped the colonists at Roanoke Island instead, the site of the earlier failed colony. It was a decision that may have sealed their fate. Soon after arriving, White discovered only a skeleton at the old fort, a grim omen. Still, the colonists set to work rebuilding. On August 18, 1587, White's own daughter, Eleanor Dare, gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Virginia, after the colony itself. She was the first English child ever born in the Americas, a small spark of hope in an increasingly uncertain venture. Within days of Virginia Dare's birth, the colonists realized they were running short on supplies and needed help. They convinced John White, against his own wishes as it meant leaving behind his daughter and newborn granddaughter, to sail back to England to organize a resupply mission. Before he left, the colonists made an agreement with White If they were forced to leave Roanoke while he was away, they would carve their destination into a tree or post. If they left because of danger or distress, they would add a Maltese cross above the message. White expected to return within a few months. Instead, it would take him 3 long years to make it back. What happened next had nothing to do with the colonists themselves. It was a matter of international politics. When White reached England in November 1587, the country was bracing for war. Spain was assembling the mighty Spanish Armada to invade England, and Queen Elizabeth ordered every available ship to stay in port for national defense. White pleaded for a resupply voyage, and he did manage to get 2 small ships to attempt the crossing in 1588. But the ship's crews, more interested in pirating Spanish vessels for profit, got into a fight with a French ship and were forced to turn back to England badly damaged without ever reaching Roanoke. England defeated the Spanish Armada in the summer of 1588, but the chaos of war combined with a lack of funding and interest delayed any further rescue attempts. It wasn't until 1590, 3 agonizing years after he'd left his family behind, that John White finally secured passage back across the Atlantic. White's ship anchored off Roanoke Island on August 18, 1590, his granddaughter Virginia Dare's 3rd birthday. Excited and anxious, his crew fired signal shots and blew trumpets as they approached, hoping for a joyful reunion. Nothing answered back. When White and his men finally reached the settlement, they found the fort dismantled, not destroyed. Its houses taken down carefully, as if the colonists had planned an orderly departure rather than fled in a panic. There was no sign of violence, no scattered belongings, no bodies. It was as though 115 people had simply packed up and walked away. Then White noticed something carved into one of the fort's support posts, the letters Croatoan. Nearby on a tree, he found the letters CRO carved separately. Crucially, there was no Maltese cross carved anywhere, meaning, according to their agreed-upon signal, the colonists had not left in distress. They had gone somewhere on purpose, and that somewhere was Croatoan. Croatoan was both the name of a nearby island, modern-day Hatteras Island, and the name of a friendly native tribe who lived there, led by a chief named Manteo, a Croatoan man who had actually traveled to England with earlier expeditions and served as an interpreter and ally to the English settlers. This single word offered the most promising, most logical clue to the colonists' fate. They had likely relocated to live among the Croatoan people, perhaps due to dwindling food, worsening relations with other tribes, or simply the practical need for support from people who already knew how to survive on this land. Unfortunately, White never got the chance to follow that lead. A violent storm was brewing, his ship's anchor cables were failing, and his crew, more concerned with their own safety and a planned side trip to hunt for Spanish treasure ships in the Caribbean, refused to sail the short distance to Croatoan Island to investigate. White was forced to turn back to England, never to return to Roanoke and never to see his daughter or granddaughter again. For over 4 centuries, historians, archaeologists, and amateur sleuths have proposed several competing theories. Theory 1: assimilation. Many historians believe this is the most likely explanation. The colonists, low on supplies and facing a harsh winter, may have split into smaller groups and moved in with friendly native communities, including the Croatoan on Hatteras Island, and possibly other groups further inland, blending into their communities over time. Theory 2: conflict with the Powhatan. Decades later, in 1607, English settlers at Jamestown heard secondhand reports from native informants that Chief Powhatan, a powerful leader in the region, may have ordered an attack on English survivors living among a tribe called the Chesapeake, allegedly because a prophecy warned that a nation would arise from the Chesapeake Bay area to end his rule. Theory 3: disease and starvation. Some researchers suggest the colonists may have died out gradually from illness, famine, or a severe drought. Tree ring studies have shown that the years 1587 to 1589 were part of the worst drought in the region in nearly 800 years, which would have devastated both English and native food supplies alike. Theory 4. A Spanish attack. Since Spain considered the region its territory and had already destroyed a French colony in Florida decades earlier, some have wondered if Spanish forces from St. Augustine found and attacked Roanoke. However, no Spanish records have ever confirmed this, making it the least supported theory. The mystery hasn't stopped intriguing people in the modern era. In the 1930s, a series of engraved stones known as the Dare Stones surfaced, claiming to tell Eleanor Dare's story of tragedy and death. Most historians and scientists now consider these to be an elaborate hoax. More promising has been real archaeology. Excavations on Hatteras Island, led by archaeologist Mark Horton and the Croatoan Archaeological Society, uncovered English artifacts, including a signet ring, gun parts, and European-style pottery, dating to the late 1500s, mixed among Native American items. This supports the idea that English colonists really did live alongside the Croatoan people after leaving Roanoke. Additionally, the ongoing Lost Colony DNA project has been studying the genetics of families in the region, including some who identify as Lumbee, a Native American tribe with oral traditions suggesting partial descent from the Roanoke colonists. While DNA evidence remains inconclusive, the cultural and historical links are compelling. The story of Roanoke isn't just a spooky historical footnote. It's a genuine reminder of how fragile early colonization efforts were and how the fates of English settlers were often deeply intertwined with the native peoples they depended on, traded with, fought against, and in this case, may have joined entirely. Virginia Dare has become a lasting symbol in American culture, remembered in place names, monuments, and stories throughout North Carolina to this day. The truth is, we may never know with total certainty what happened to the 115 people John White left behind. But thanks to archaeology, historical records, and the oral histories of Native communities, we're closer than ever to solving America's oldest mystery, piecing together little by little the most likely ending to this remarkable and haunting story. And that's the story of the Roanoke colony, the settlers who vanished, the single word left behind, and the centuries-long search for the truth. What do you think really happened to the lost colony? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into history, please leave a like and subscribe for more true stories from our past. We'll see you in the next video.